Millionaire faked his death to test his family. What his children did will make you cry.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Is Grandpa really dead, Mom? Lucas, the 12-year-old boy, asked softly, his eyes filled with confusion as he gazed out at the misty yard behind the fogged-up glass. Paula didn't answer. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder, light as a touch between two strangers. No one in the Roberts mansion had the strength left to explain anymore. Behind them, the living room surveillance screen continued to replay the same footage. Victor Roberts, the aging man with the piercing expression, collapsing onto the marble floor, eyes wide open, fingers twitching. But that wasn't death. No one knew that in a hidden basement room beneath the mansion, Victor was still alive. He sat in a leather chair, eyes locked onto a 16-screen monitoring system. On the desk in front of him, a black folder lay open, titled, "The Experimental Death." A soft knock echoed. "Mr. Victor, everything is ready. The funeral will go just as you requested." A silver-haired man in a white lab coat stepped in. His name was Dr. Matthew Ellis, Victor's private physician and the man being handsomely paid to stage this deception. Victor didn't turn. His voice came out hoarse. "Are the cameras still working?" "Perfectly, sir." The living room, library, kitchen, Paula's room, the second-floor hallway, not a single blind spot. Victor gave a slight nod. "Good. From today on, I want to witness every true face in this house." Dr. Matthew was silent for a moment. Then he asked cautiously, "Sir, are you sure? If your family reacts poorly, it might take a serious toll on your heart." Victor spun around. His eyes gleamed like blades. "My heart's been broken for a long time, Matthew. What I need is the truth, and the truth is never gentle." Matthew bowed and stepped out. Victor turned back to the screens. One showed Lucas quietly wiping his tears behind his mother's back. Victor clenched his fist, but his gaze didn't waver. Years ago, Victor Roberts was once hailed as the iron hand of the export industry, having built an entire business empire from nothing. But it was that same hand that had crushed all emotional ties in the family. He always saw Xavier, his eldest son, as an unworthy heir. As long as Xavier didn't disgrace the family name, any mistake was forgivable. Sylvia, his youngest daughter, had been spoiled since childhood so long as she stayed out of the business. As for Paula, his daughter-in-law, Victor saw only a mediocre, foolish woman who didn't deserve to enter the Roberts family. And Lucas, that child, had been invisible to him nearly his whole life. "I gave them everything," he muttered, his voice as hard as stone. "And what I got in return was nothing but pretense." 2 weeks before the death, Victor summoned his private assistant and inheritance lawyer, Charles Mendez, into his office. "Carlos, I want to conduct a social experiment." "You're joking." Carlos looked stunned. "An experiment, on what?" "On loyalty. On people's true faces. I want to fake my death and see who bears their claws first." "But, why, Mr. Victor? Your current will still fairly divides assets between Xavier and Sylvia, just like you wanted." Victor placed a thick folder on the desk. "Do you know who's been quietly paying all my hospital bills for the past 3 years?" Carlos shook his head. "Not Xavier. Not Sylvia. It was Paula. She never left her name, never asked for recognition. Did everything as if I were a stranger." Carlos was speechless. "So, you plan to change the will?" "Not yet. I'll observe first. I want to see with my own eyes whether she's truly different or just wearing a clever mask." Victor lifted his head, his eyes ablaze. "If I'm wrong, I'll admit I've failed." Back to the present after the death. Roberts' mansion flew a mourning flag. A large portrait of Victor was placed in the living room. Xavier, dressed in a perfectly fitted black suit, stood next to the empty casket and quietly said, "Finally, freedom." In the basement, those words pierced Victor like a needle to the heart. He looked at the monitor and saw Sylvia taking selfies beside the funeral flowers, captioning it. A chapter ends, a new opportunity begins. Anyone interested in investing in luxury Roberts real estate? Victor closed his eyes. Just as I expected. In a distant corner, Paula sat silently beside Lucas. No one approached them. No words of comfort were offered. Xavier passed by and threw Paula a glance as sharp as a blade. Don't bother pretending you're grieving, Paula. You're just a leech. Lucas jumped up. Shut up. My mom's not a leech. Xavier responded coldly. Oh yeah? Then why are you still living in this house, huh? Waiting for your dead father-in-law to be buried so you can grab a share? Paula pulled her son close, her eyes red but dry. You have no right to insult us. Xavier smirked. I have every right now that he's gone. And my first right is to kick you both out of this house. In the basement, Victor sat motionless. He had just watched his grandson be insulted and heard his son speak venom. But his face remained stoic. Dr. Matthew stepped in with a tray of medication. Is your heart holding up? Victor didn't reply. He was staring at Lucas hugging an old photograph one taken when Lucas was 5, smiling in a garden. Grandpa. I miss you so much. The small voice echoed from the screen. Victor clenched his hand. For the first time in 10 years, his eyes welled with tears. But he didn't allow himself to break. He stood and quietly looked into the large mirror hanging in the room. The man in the reflection was no longer Victor Roberts, the powerful millionaire. But a lonely old man, trying to hold on to something that had long since shattered. Begin, Matthew, he said. I want to know, if I still have a chance to make things right. The blare of funeral trumpets filled the luxurious parlor, adorned with white flowers, imported scented candles, and high black velvet drapes. Everything had been arranged by a premium funeral service, matching the Roberts family's reputation. But in that entire atmosphere, the one thing missing was love. Amazing, honestly, Sylvia whispered to her boyfriend, a Texas model named Matthew, as she adjusted the tight black dress clinging to her frame. Air conditioning's perfect, soft lighting, and a great backdrop for photos. Matthew chuckled and leaned in for a selfie beside the casket. Sylvia took a few more shots, framed with the text, "Rest in peace, Dad." What caption do you think I should use? She asked. Maybe, Dad's passing inspires me to keep pursuing bold real estate ventures. Love it, Sylvia nodded. And the hashtags? Hashtag Dad's Mansion, hashtag Investment Opportunity, hashtag Sylvia Roberts Inspires. Not far from them, Xavier stood beside the lawyer, Mr. Albert Sullivan, a bald man in a gray suit who always carried a thick folder. So, Xavier said in a low, deliberate tone, the inheritance isn't split yet? Mr. Albert glanced around before replying. That's correct. For now, everything is held jointly until the official will is read. Xavier smiled, his lips curling wide. Perfect. That means I can make my move soon. Mr. Albert frowned. What do you mean by that? Xavier turned toward the staircase leading to the library, where Paula stood quietly with Lucas. I don't want those two in this house another day. The sooner we get rid of them, the easier it'll be to manage things. Lucas clutched the framed photo of his smiling grandfather. He didn't cry out. His tears streamed down in silence. Mom, did Grandpa really hate me? He whispered. Paula didn't know how to answer. She sat beside him, looked at the photo, and exhaled. He was a very complicated man, but I believe, deep down, he had feelings. He just didn't know how to show them. Lucas lowered his head. I remember on my 7th birthday, he didn't come. Paula gently squeezed his shoulder. Yeah. But do you remember anything else? Lucas nodded. After I went to bed, I heard tapping on the window. Grandpa was standing outside the gate, watching. Then he left. Paula froze. She had never known about that. In the basement, Victor gripped the armrest tightly as he heard that. His aged eyes dimmed, as if trying to absorb every word from his grandson. Dr. Matthew stood beside him and whispered. "Are you okay, sir? Your heart rate's rising." Victor didn't answer. He just kept looking at Lucas on the screen, the boy he once called a weakling unworthy of attention. But now, it was that same sorrowful gaze that made Victor's chest ache with every breath. In the funeral parlor, Catherine, the longtime housekeeper, a middle-aged woman from San Diego who had served the Roberts family for over 2 decades, shook her head gently. "In my whole life, I've never seen a funeral without a single genuine tear." She stood close to Paula and whispered. "You shouldn't have come, Paula. They don't consider you family." Paula replied softly. "I came for Lucas. He needs to say goodbye to his grandfather." Catherine looked down at Lucas. "That poor child, no one stands up for him." Paula gave a faint smile. "It's okay. We're used to it." A glass clinked. Xavier stepped forward, feigning a respectful bow. "On behalf of the family, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to pay their respects. Though my father was a tough man, he built an empire we are all proud of." Sylvia cut in, not waiting her turn. "And now it's time for us to carry that legacy forward, expanding it into a new, younger, more modern direction." A relative named Andrew, Victor's uncle, shook his head. "Younger? The man's not even buried yet." Sylvia laughed. "Uncle Andrew, what century are you living in? Death doesn't mean we stop evolving." Lucas tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, I want to go home. We still have to say goodbye to a few more people." "No. I feel Grandpa watching. And he's not happy." In the basement, Victor's eyes snapped open. Lucas was staring straight at the tiny camera mounted in the window frame. "How?" he muttered. Dr. Matthew furrowed his brow. "You think the boy noticed?" Victor didn't answer. For the first time in years, he felt afraid. Not of being discovered, but of being too late. By the end of the service, the housekeeper was clearing the tables and guests were slowly departing. Sylvia and Matthew were still joking around by the mini bar. Xavier pulled Mr. Albert aside into a corner. "I need you to act fast." "What is it?" "Transfer all my father's assets into my name as soon as possible. If anyone objects, especially Paula, use the argument that she's not blood-related to the Roberts family." Mr. Albert paused. "Careful. She knows the law. And, if Victor changed his will before he passed." Xavier sneered. "He didn't. I checked. The last version is still the one I have. No one else can touch it." Catherine approached Paula. "I overheard Xavier saying something ugly about you. Are they planning anything?" Paula sighed wearily. "Probably trying to kick us out again. It's not the first time." Catherine took her hand. "If you need a place to stay, I have a small apartment in Brooklyn. It's not fancy, but it's safe." Paula's eyes welled up. "Thank you. But I'm not ready to leave." Lucas looked up at his mother. "I don't want to go either." That night, the mansion turned unusually cold. On the surveillance screens, Victor sat motionless, watching the replayed footage. Xavier laughing. Sylvia posing. Mr. Albert slipping a folder into his coat. Lucas crying. Paula sitting still. And him, in their eyes, nothing more than a corpse not yet buried. Rain drummed steadily on the mansion's glass roof. In the dim glow of blue monitors, Victor Roberts sat alone in the basement control room. The light cast shadows on his deeply wrinkled, solitary face. "It's been 3 days since the funeral," Dr. Matthews said, setting a teacup down on the table. "Your heart rate's steady. But I'm not sure your nerves are. Victor didn't respond. He kept his eyes glued to the screens. Xavier wasn't even trying to hide his plan to seize the house. Sylvia was busy calling in interior designers. Paula had quietly shut herself in her room, avoiding everyone. "Turn off all the monitors," Victor ordered. "I need to focus." "Yes, sir," Matthew replied with a nod. Victor turned toward a small desk in the corner. An old laptop sat beside a thick financial file several hundred pages long delivered through internal channels, compiled by his assistant Carlos. Carlos collected all the data from the past 3 years across the international banking system, Matthew added. "Every expense related to you is listed. Hospital bills, medication, caregiver salaries, even personal spending." Victor gave a curt nod. "Let's see, who actually gave a damn?" The screen displayed a detailed statement. The first line read: "Transfer on March 12, 2022, amount, $3,200. Note, first installment for diabetes medication. Account, anonymous." Victor scrolled down. April 19, 2022, $2,800, emergency hospital bill, North Dallas. July 5, 2022, $1,500, supplemental health insurance. All from anonymous accounts. "These dates," Victor muttered, "were all times I was hospitalized, but Xavier said he had nothing to do with it." Matthew said quietly. "Exactly. Xavier even signed a request to reduce your nursing care. I still have a copy." Victor glanced at him. "Show me the account holder details." Matthew typed in a few commands. A string of banking information appeared, names redacted. But Victor wasn't someone easily fooled. He had built the Roberts Group financial network from scratch and had once dismantled hundreds of money laundering cases. Switch to the account's authorized user. A name popped up. Paula Bennett. Victor froze. It was her, he whispered. For 3 years straight, she covered every expense. Matthew nodded. No name, no memo. She used an anonymous account, leaving no trace that could lead back to her. Without internal access to the bank system, no one would have known. Victor slowly leaned back in his chair. His throat was dry. Xavier and Sylvia, not a cent. Matthew pulled up the next file. It was Xavier's spending chart. Italian wine, $7,800. Vacation to Hawaii, $12,500. Personal branding consultant, $3,000. Not a single expense related to you, Matthew concluded. Victor pressed his lips together. His eyes sunken, his hand gripped the armrest until his knuckles turned white. In his mind, chaotic memories surfaced. Xavier once declared at a family meeting, "I'm not wasting another cent on that walking corpse. My dad's a financial burden." Sylvia once shouted, "Dad's old, senile, and costs more in medication than my daughter's entire college tuition." At the time, he had dismissed those as tantrums from immature children. But now, everything was painfully clear. Victor asked, "What about Paula? Where did she get the money?" Matthew shook his head. "Only guesses. A preschool teacher's salary wouldn't cover that. She may have sold personal belongings, borrowed from friends, taken side jobs." Victor remained silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with regret. "She once asked me to get Lucas a scholarship from Roberts Group. I refused, called her an opportunist." Matthew looked at him with sympathy. "Maybe you see things differently now." "No," Victor said dryly. "I haven't changed at all." Matthew frowned slightly. "But you're crying." Victor jolted, quickly reaching up to wipe his face. But it was too late, tears had already dampened his wrinkled cheeks. He stood and walked to an old bookshelf, pulling down a file stamped "Original Inheritance, October 2019. He opened to the first page, where his rigid handwriting read. All assets to be equally divided between Xavier Roberts and Sylvia Roberts. There wasn't a single line for Paula or Lucas. Victor whispered hoarsely. How absurd, the one who lived for me the most is the one who gets nothing. On the screen, an old video replayed. Lucas was building Legos in his room when Xavier's voice roared from downstairs. He doesn't need toys. That little bastard just needs to know who owns this house. Terrified, Lucas ran, clutching a broken Lego piece to his chest. Victor slumped over the desk. That's how I let him grow up, in fear, isolation, and disregard. Matthew placed a hand on his shoulder. You still have time to do something. Victor looked up. Not yet. Not yet. I need to see more. What more is there to see? Matthew asked, surprised. To see if she still continues, even when she knows there's nothing left to gain. You want to test her again? Victor narrowed his eyes. Kindness only means something when there's no reward expected. Matthew stepped back and sighed. Sir, sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need proof. Victor turned away. I don't want forgiveness. I want the truth. And truth always comes with a cost. That morning, in the grand marble dining room, Xavier Roberts sat at the head of the table like a king. Sunlight streamed through white curtains, highlighting the smugness on his face. He wore a rolled-up white shirt, loosened tie, sipping coffee like he already owned the mansion. Sylvia strolled in wearing a silk nightgown barely covering her thighs, yawning as she pulled out a chair across from him. Why'd you call me so early? Do you know you ruined a beautiful dream I was having? Xavier glanced at his sister. I need you alert. Today is the day we change everything. Sylvia scoffed, pouring herself orange juice. Change, as in, split the inheritance. Xavier nodded and lightly tapped the polished oak table. Exactly. No need to wait for the will. Dad's dead. There's no law stopping us from restructuring everything right now. Sylvia blinked. But Mr. Albert said we should wait a few more weeks. Xavier replied coldly. For what? For who? Paula. Waiting for that woman to file a lawsuit? I'm not an idiot. In the surveillance basement, Victor furrowed his brow as the words rang out from the dining room camera. Now your son shows his true colors, Matthew muttered, watching him. Do you still want to keep watching? Victor nodded. Keep going. Xavier pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase, architectural plans for dividing the mansion. I've contacted an interior architect. The old library will be demolished and turned into a modern art gallery. Sylvia laughed. Dad's library? That place reeks of mold and ancient books. Who would want it? Exactly, Xavier replied. We need to wipe out every trace of that old era. The new Roberts brand won't be tied to some outdated, tyrannical old man. It'll represent the elite of the new generation. At that moment, Paula entered the dining room, holding Lucas's hand. The boy still clutched an old photo of his grandfather. Xavier looked at them like strangers invading his personal space. Why are you still here? He asked bluntly. Paula responded calmly. I just wanted Lucas to have a normal breakfast. We'll be leaving soon. Today, Xavier snapped. I've already had the lawyer prepare the papers to establish my management rights over the property. You no longer have the right to stay. Lucas widened his eyes. You can't kick my mom out. Xavier turned sharply and looked down at the boy. What did you just say? This is my grandpa's house. Your grandpa's dead. This house belongs to me now. Lucas backed away, frightened. Paula held him tightly, shielding him. You don't have to talk to a child like that. Xavier scoffed. And you should know your place. I'm giving you 2 days. After that, I'll hire people to drag your luggage out to the gate. Paula looked him in the eyes. I took care of your father for 3 years. I paid the hospital bills, bought the medication, hired the nurses. Did you even know that? Xavier shrugged. I don't care. And my father didn't acknowledge it in his will either. Lucas suddenly stepped forward, eyes brimming with tears. I hate you. You're mean. Shut up. Xavier yelled, then slapped Lucas hard across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the entire room. Paula screamed. Are you insane? You hit a child. Sylvia sat silently, biting her lip, but didn't interfere. Matthew had just reached the doorway and froze in hesitation. Xavier showed no remorse. He raised his head. Don't preach to me. You and your son should be grateful I haven't called the cops on you for squatting. In the basement, Victor shot to his feet. His face turned pale, hands trembling. That bastard, he growled. He hit Lucas, in my house. Matthew rushed to support him. Sir, please calm down. Your blood pressure is spiking. Victor pushed him aside, eyes blazing red. I gave birth to a monster. Matthew whispered. So what will you do now? Victor collapsed back into his chair. Keep watching. Let's see how many more sins are left to expose. Upstairs, Catherine, the longtime housekeeper, had just stepped into the kitchen when she heard the slap. She rushed in and saw Paula holding Lucas, the boy's cheek red and his eyes filled with tears. Oh my God, what happened? She gasped. Paula's voice broke. He hit Lucas. Right in front of me. Catherine glared at Xavier. You're not ashamed? Hitting your own nephew? Xavier sneered. Stay out of this. It's none of your business. Catherine shook with anger. I changed your diapers, fed you after your mother died. And now you call me just some woman like I'm a stranger. Xavier replied coldly. You are a stranger. And if you don't want to be fired, stay in your place. Paula stood, pulling Lucas with her. We're not having breakfast. Come on, honey. Lucas looked at Catherine, his voice cracking. I don't get it, why does everyone hate me? Catherine knelt down and took his hand. No one hates you, Lucas. It's just, some people lost their hearts a long time ago. Xavier shouted from behind. Get out of my house. All of you. Get out. In the basement, Victor trembled violently. He gripped the edge of the chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. That's enough, he whispered. Enough to convict. Matthew looked at him and said gently. Then we can act now. Victor didn't respond right away. After a few seconds, he said. Not yet. There's still one thing I want to see. Sylvia's reaction. Upstairs, in her private room, Sylvia was on the phone with an investment partner. Yes, Mr. Carlos. That's right, the family estate is being completely renovated. My father just passed, but it's opened a lot of new opportunities for all of us. The person on the other end said something, and Sylvia laughed. No, I'm not sad at all. I think he'd want it this way. My father, he never let emotions influence his decisions. After the call, Sylvia stepped out onto the balcony, looking down into the courtyard. The Roberts mansion darkened with the approaching night. Autumn rain pelted the large glass windows of the living room like fingernails scratching rotted wood. Paula sat silently on the stair landing, eyes fixed on the worn-out suitcase at her feet. Lucas clutched his old teddy bear tightly, his wide eyes full of confusion and fear. Catherine quietly handed Paula a tattered raincoat. You should wear this. It's pouring outside. I tried speaking to Xavier, but he... Paula shook her head. No need to say anything more, Catherine. I understand. Lucas whispered, his voice choked. Mom, we don't have anywhere to go. We'll find somewhere. Paula held him close, but her trembling voice couldn't hide the despair. The grand doors flung open. Xavier stepped out, a glass of whiskey in hand, leaning against the doorframe. Have you left yet? I don't want to see your face in my kitchen tomorrow morning. She doesn't have anywhere else to stay, Catherine spoke up, her voice sharpening. You're kicking out a mother and child in the middle of the rain. Xavier smirked. You think I care? This house isn't a shelter for freeloaders. She's not a Roberts. That kid isn't either. I am Grandpa's grandson. Lucas shouted. Xavier stepped closer, crouching down to Lucas's face. Your grandpa's dead. And if you say one more word, I'll have someone shut that filthy little mouth of yours. That's enough. Paula shielded her son. Have you lost every shred of humanity? Xavier drained his glass, then turned to the housekeeper. Catherine, you've got two choices, keep working for me or leave with them. Catherine froze. She looked at Paula, then at Lucas, her eyes red with tears. But finally, she turned away. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't. Paula nodded. It's okay. Thank you for the kindness you once showed us. In the basement, Victor watched it all unfold on the screen. His eyes no longer burned with anger, they were filled with utter pain. Matthew stood beside him, whispering. You're still not stepping in. You'll let them be thrown out like that? Victor clenched both hands on the arms of his chair. I let too many years go by without acting. One more night won't change anything. Matthew gritted his teeth. You sound like you're punishing yourself more than saving them. Victor shook his head faintly. No. I want to punish what I created. Xavier threw the suitcase onto the stone patio. Go. If you're still here in 10 minutes, I'll call security. Sylvia stood at the second-floor window, a glass of red wine in hand. There's no need to be so dramatic, Xavier. Just give them a few $100 and send them on their way. Xavier snapped. I'm not giving her a damn cent. She's had more than enough from Dad already. Lucas turned to his mother and asked quietly. Where will we go? Paula held his hand tightly, lips pressed together. The bus station. I'll find a place to rent. Xavier clapped mockingly. Perfect. The poor returning to their natural habitat. His words sliced through the air like a blade. No one responded. Paula bent down to pull her suitcase, but the zipper snapped off. Clothes spilled onto the wet ground. Lucas dropped to his knees, picking them up. Mom, your stuff is getting wet. Paula knelt beside him, gathering their old clothes, notebooks, a few jackets. Her hands shook from the cold, hair soaked and stuck to her face. Catherine stood behind the cracked door, hand covering her mouth, tears falling. But she didn't dare step outside. Upstairs, Sylvia returned to her room, laughing as she started a live stream. Hey everyone! Small garden party tonight at the Roberts mansion celebrating a new beginning. DM me for an invite. In the rain, Paula finally stood, pulling Lucas tightly into her chest. I'm sorry, baby. But we're going to be okay. Lucas said nothing. He just stared up at the window where his grandfather once sat reading, now replaced by a cold yellow light. In the basement, Victor collapsed onto the desk. Rainwater seeped in through a crack in the wall, soaking his feet. Matthew knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. They have nothing left, Victor. If you stay silent now, it won't just be you who dies. It'll be the last human part of you, too. Victor didn't respond. Only the sound of rain and his erratic heartbeat remained. Paula dragged the broken suitcase, leading Lucas through the downpour, past the black iron gates of the mansion. No one saw them off. No one looked back. Only a small camera quietly recorded it all. And a man drowning in the punishment of his own creation. 3 days after Paula and Lucas were cast out, the Roberts mansion had taken on a new face. No more children's laughter, no scent of morning coffee, no soft footsteps of Catherine cleaning the kitchen. Instead, drilling, hammering, construction workers shouting across marble staircases and through the grand hall. Sylvia stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, chewing gum. Beside her stood a thin man with a ponytail, Fred, the interior architect. "Knock this whole wall down," Sylvia said, pointing to a dark wooden wall once filled with her parents' wedding photos. "Looks ancient. I want this whole area open, like a bar in Miami Beach." Fred nodded. "We can replace it with tempered glass, white oak flooring, and color-changing LED lighting. Sleek and modern." Sylvia nodded approvingly. "Exactly, exactly. And the staircase, tear it down too. Every time I walk past it, I feel like I'm in the 1950s. Fred jotted notes on his iPad. "What about Mr. Victor's library?" Xavier entered, holding a blueprint. "I already said, tear it down. I don't want to see another book from that old man." Fred hesitated. "But, that wall's load-bearing. Then reinforce it." "Money's not an issue," Xavier snapped. In the basement, Victor sat frozen in front of the monitors. His eyes sunken, hands trembling. Matthew whispered. "They're destroying everything, Victor. Are you really still going to wait?" Victor didn't turn. "Every wall they knock down is a slap to my face. Let me take it all." Matthew frowned. "This isn't punishment anymore. It's execution." Sylvia led Fred to the second floor. They entered the room that once belonged to her mother, Mary, a woman Victor had loved deeply, but never had the courage to apologize to in the end. "This room," Fred began gently. "Should we preserve it? Everything seems untouched." Sylvia burst out laughing. "Preserve it? God, this was the darkest room in the house. My mother lived in here like a shadow. No one even knew what hobbies she had or how many times she laughed." Fred said nothing. Sylvia walked up to the old wooden wardrobe, opened it. Inside were neatly folded handkerchiefs, an empty perfume bottle, and a small leather-bound journal. She flipped it open, skimming her mother's handwriting. Today, Lucas smiled when he saw wildflowers in the garden. He looked so much like Victor. Paula made chicken soup the way my mother used to. It warmed me a little. Sylvia scoffed and tossed the journal onto the bed. So pathetically weak. My mother was a woman locked up her whole life and never realized she could fight back. Fred started to speak, then held back. Xavier appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame. "What are you planning to do with this room?" "Dressing room," Sylvia answered. "It's spacious, quiet, and has a nice view of the backyard." "Perfect." Xavier nodded. "Go for it. Free any ghosts still hanging around." In the basement, Victor's hands shook as he reached out and gently touched the wedding photo of him and Mary beside the monitor. "Mary," he whispered. "I let you live in silence, and now they trample even your shadow." Matthew stood behind him, his eyes full of sorrow. "You could end this game right now." Victor slowly shook his head. "Not yet. There's still one final act to play." That afternoon, Sylvia hosted a garden party at the mansion. Her friends from the art and fashion scene crowded the lawn, sipping wine, puffing cigars, electronic music blaring in the background. "To new beginnings," Sylvia shouted. Her boyfriend Matthew, wearing sunglasses, grinned. "This place has real potential for a fashion show. You should consider renting it out." Xavier raised his glass and chimed in. "Or open a chain of luxury homestays. I've got friends in the real estate investment world." A blonde woman laughed. "Your father must be so proud of you both, watching from heaven." Sylvia shrugged. He's not in heaven. Everyone burst into laughter. At the gate, Officer Navarro, a local police officer, arrived, knocking 3 times. Catherine answered the door. "Sorry to bother you. I received a complaint about noise," he said. Xavier stepped forward, hands in his pockets. "We're having a family gathering. No need to involve the police." Navarro looked around. "This is Mr. Victor Roberts' estate, right? I met him a few times at community events." Xavier nodded. "Yes. He passed away." Navarro bowed his head. "I'm sorry to hear that. He was a cold man, but he funded a lot of youth programs around here." Sylvia laughed. "My father did charity work to dodge taxes, dear officer." Navarro frowned. "I'm just here to give a reminder. Please keep the noise within acceptable levels." Xavier nodded. "We'll turn off the music by 10. Navarro walked away slowly. Catherine walked through the hallway, looking around at the mansion that now felt like a soulless shell. The statue of a mother cradling her child in the front garden, Mary's Choice, had been removed. She whispered, "This place isn't a home anymore." In the basement, Victor leaned back. His eyes no longer held anger, only emptiness. "There's nothing left to watch," Matthew said. "Just rubble." Victor looked at the monitor. The only image that kept him awake, a photo of Lucas at age 5, laughing in the garden. He placed his hand on the screen. "That boy, he still has light." Matthew nodded softly. "And you still have a choice." Night fell over the Roberts mansion like a heavy curtain, smothering all light. The rain had stopped, but the wind howled through the cracks like whispers from the past. The ground floor was silent. The second floor still. Only the dim light in the basement control room remained. Victor hunched over a wooden desk, in front of him a blank sheet of paper, a black ink pen, and his trembling hands. It was the 9th night he had lived, falsely dead, inside his own home. The 9th night he watched his children destroy everything he once called legacy. Matthew stood quietly behind him, saying nothing. Only Victor remained alone with the words he had never dared to say. He began to write. "Lucas, my grandson. If you're reading this letter, perhaps I am already gone. Or maybe I'm still somewhere, sitting quietly in a place you wouldn't recognize. Either way, what I write below is true and something I've never had the courage to say to anyone in my life." Victor looked up, took a deep breath, then continued. "I've lived my whole life as a tyrant. I believed power was everything. That if I controlled everything, no one could betray me. But that belief made me the loneliest man in my own house." Matthew stepped closer and whispered. "This is the first time I've seen you speak from the heart." Victor nodded faintly without turning around. "Perhaps, it'll also be the last." Upstairs in the living room, Sylvia was flipping through the new design plans for the mansion. The statue out front should be replaced by a fountain. "I want an angel holding a sword, more aesthetic." Xavier tossed an empty beer can into the trash and said curtly. "As long as it's nothing like that damn statue Mom put up. Gives me the creeps every time I pass it." Sylvia looked up and gave a cold smile. "I never understood what Mom wanted. She lived in her own world." Xavier shrugged. "Whatever. She was weak. Died a stupid death. If she knew we turned her room into a walk-in closet, she probably wouldn't say a word." Catherine passed by with a tray of drinks, paused for a moment, and silently shook her head. Xavier noticed. "What? Got something to say?" Catherine answered without turning around. "No. I don't have the right to say anything anymore." In the basement, Victor watched the screen. He heard it all. Saw it all. He scratched out a line in the letter and wrote again. "Sylvia, my daughter. I never understood you. And I never gave you a chance to be understood. I taught you how to spend money, not how to love someone. I don't blame you. I blame myself. Xavier. You are the most distorted reflection of me. Every time you speak, I see myself but the worst version I ever tried to hide. Victor paused. The ink blurred. Meanwhile, Lucas sat curled up in a cheap rented room in the Bronx. The room was narrow and damp, car horns blaring outside the window. Paula was washing clothes in the small bathroom. The boy opened an old, torn comic book Don Quixote, a cheap print his grandfather had given him 7 years ago. Mom, Lucas called out. Did Grandpa hate me? Paula dried her hands and sat beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. No one truly hates a child, Lucas. Some people just don't know how to show their feelings. Lucas looked at her, then rested his head on her shoulder. I wish Grandpa were still alive. Victor trembled as he reread the line he'd just written. Lucas, you are the only one in this house who ever looked at me with sincerity. Even after being struck, you still said, this is my grandpa's house. I do not deserve that love. But I heard you. I saw you. And every time you spoke, I felt more deserving of punishment than ever. Matthew asked. Will you send the letter? Victor clutched the page tightly. I don't know. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe. I'm too late. Matthew shook his head. It's never too late. But if you don't send it, it will never be enough. Victor turned away, his gaze hollow. I need more time. Upstairs, Xavier and Sylvia were discussing selling the plot where their mother was buried. Xavier pointed to a red-marked square on a map. Here. The plot behind the mansion where Mom's grave is can be split into 3 lots. Prime location, near the subway. We could get at least $1 million. Sylvia frowned. You want to move Mom's grave? If not move it, demolish it. Build over it. She doesn't need it. Are you sure you're not insane? Xavier laughed. Insane is living your whole life in the shadow of a cruel father and a spineless mother. Sylvia was silent. After a moment, she nodded coldly. Do it. In the basement, Victor could no longer hold his pen. He slammed his hand down on the desk, knocking the lamp sideways. They're selling the land where Mary is buried, he growled through clenched teeth. They really, truly have no soul left. Matthew gripped his shoulder. Victor, you can't let them continue. Don't wait any longer. Victor withdrew the letter and slipped it into an envelope. But, he didn't write a recipient's name. On the monitor, the replayed footage showed Lucas at the funeral, clutching the photo of him and his grandfather, his cheek red from being slapped, his eyes soaked in tears. Victor touched the screen with one trembling finger. You forgave me, long before I even knew I was wrong. A single tear slid silently onto the desk. That morning, the Los Angeles sky was strangely clear after days of relentless rain. The Roberts mansion buzzed with activity, construction crews continued tearing down the library, Sylvia live-streamed from the 2nd floor in a glittering dress, and Xavier was in a meeting with Mr. Albert and a real estate broker. We're planning to subdivide the entire area behind the mansion, Xavier said, eyes fixed on the layout. Priority goes to high-capacity investors. The Roberts name will become a living symbol of the new era. Mr. Albert asked quietly. You're sure you want to sign the deposit agreement today? Xavier nodded. Do it fast. Before freeloaders like Paula try to come back claiming anything. Sylvia called down from the staircase. Make sure I get 40% of the revenue. The idea to demolish Mom's room was mine. Xavier shouted back. Don't worry. Just don't ruin the launch party. The doorbell rang. Everything froze. A new maid named Rosie rushed to the gate and opened it. A tall figure stood there, cloaked in a pale gray hospital coat, illuminated by the morning sun. He stepped inside. Slowly. Wordlessly. No introduction needed. Everyone fell silent. Sylvia dropped her phone down the staircase. Xavier shot up from his seat, mouth open but unable to speak. Victor Roberts, the man they believed dead, stood tall in the center of the living room, alive like a ghost of vengeance. No, it can't be. Sylvia backed away, her hands trembling. Dad, you died. I saw you. Victor curled his lips into a faint, icy smile. Perhaps what you saw was only the end of an illusion. I stayed alive to witness the rot you all have bred. Xavier blurted. Dad, don't tell me this was some kind of test. Victor slammed a thick folder onto the table. Exactly. And all of you failed miserably. Xavier looked down at the cover, the bank's logo and dozens of detailed financial statements. Victor's voice was sharp. The person you called a freeloader was the only one quietly paying my hospital bills, hiring nurses, buying my medicine for 3 years straight. Paula? Sylvia stammered. No way. She doesn't even have money. Victor pounded the table. That's exactly what made it valuable. She had nothing yet gave everything. And you? You had everything and only ever wanted more. Xavier's face turned red, veins bulging in his neck. You're overreacting. I just wanted to grow your legacy to a new level. Victor laughed coldly. I built this mansion to preserve your mother's memory. You turned it into a party kennel. You call that growth? Sylvia dropped to her knees, hands over her head. I didn't know. I thought you were really gone. Victor looked down at her with disgust. Even my death became your stage play. Mr. Albert stood up shakily, trying to collect himself. Mr. Victor. I was the one entrusted with the final will. Victor cut him off, his glare like a blade. You helped cover up the truth. Don't think I didn't know about the commission Xavier paid you to bury the documents about Paula. Mr. Albert stepped back. I'm sorry. Victor turned to Rosie, the new maid, and said sternly. Call Carlos, my lead attorney. Tell him to bring the updated will. An hour later, Charles Mendez entered the mansion with a black leather briefcase. He nodded at Victor, then looked at the group huddled together in fear. Mr. Victor, as per your request, I'm here to publicly present the official will, notarized and filed with the court 2 months ago. Xavier screamed. No. I hold the last version. Carlos smiled calmly. The one you forced a lawyer to sign illegally. We've annulled all its legal standing. Now, I will read the valid version. He opened the file and read clearly, word by word. All movable and immovable assets of Victor Roberts, including this mansion, shares in Roberts Group, bank accounts, vehicles, and land, shall be transferred in full to Ms. Paula Bennett and her son, Lucas Roberts. No portion shall be allocated to any other family member. Silence fell like a hammer. Xavier's face turned ashen, as if slapped. Dad, you can't do this. I'm your son. Sylvia is your daughter. Victor growled. You chose to sever blood ties the moment you threw the only decent soul in this house out into the rain. Sylvia burst into tears and crawled toward her father's feet. I'm sorry. I didn't think Paula was actually a good person. Victor didn't look at her. You didn't think at all. You just wanted to take. And now, you have nothing. At that moment, Paula appeared at the front door Rosie had called her. She wore an old coat, her face still guarded as she stepped into the place that had once oozed with hostility. Lucas walked beside her, clutching her hand tightly. When the mother and son entered, Victor stood up. Paula froze. You're really alive? Victor nodded. His eyes were no longer cold, just tired. Lucas looked up at him, hesitant. Are you mad at me? Victor knelt, looking the boy in the eyes. He reached out, and for the first time in his life, gently touched Lucas's hair. "No," he said, voice low. "You are the only good thing left in this family." Lucas broke into tears and hugged him tightly. Xavier shouted. "No. This is fraud. I'll sue. I'll." Victor turned sharply. "Go ahead. I'll go to court. But this time, to expose every last one of you." The air in the Roberts mansion felt like a storm had just blown through. Victor's final words split the house in two, on one side, a late but just reckoning, on the other, the collapse of those who thought themselves untouchable. Xavier clenched his fists, his eyes bloodshot. "I'm your blood. I'm the rightful heir of the Roberts name. You can't hand everything over to an outsider like Paula." Victor glared at him. "Remember the day you kicked your mother out of this house for opposing you using the charity fund to buy a sports car? You lost your right to be called a man that day." Sylvia sobbed, mascara streaking down her face. "Dad. I just wanted to modernize things. I didn't know it would offend Mom." Victor was unmoved. He signaled to Carlos. "Read the final clause." Carlos stood tall, his voice firm. "The will states, from the moment of declaration, Mr. Xavier Roberts and Ms. Sylvia Roberts are removed from all inheritance rights, are prohibited from residing in the mansion, and are barred from accessing any assets or business records of Roberts Group." Xavier screamed. "You're killing us." Victor said coldly. "I'm not killing anyone. I'm just cutting the rope you used to strangle others." Lucas looked at Xavier and asked hesitantly. "Did you ever love my mom?" Xavier hissed. "Your mother was just a leech off my dad's money." Lucas clenched his fists, shaking. Paula placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't respond. We've been here long enough." Victor raised his voice. "No. You and your son are the true heirs of this house." He turned to Rosie. "Prepare the guest room. From today on, Lucas and Paula will live here as rightful heirs." Paula stepped back, stunned. I don't think I can accept this." Victor looked at her, his voice soft for the first time. "You are the only one in this house who still has a conscience. If you don't accept it, then everything becomes meaningless." Catherine, who had been silently watching, broke into tears and stepped forward. "Dear God, finally, justice." Xavier laughed madly. "Justice? Don't make me laugh. A crying little boy and a nobody woman inherit $100 million empire?" Victor replied, voice sharp as steel. "Because they deserve it. And you don't. Now get out of my house." Mr. Albert kept his head down, avoiding Victor's gaze. "Mr. Victor. I'll withdraw from this case. I apologize for betraying your trust." Victor waved him off. "You'll face legal consequences. The court will evaluate your role." Sylvia clutched her bag, crying and screaming. "Dad! I have nowhere to go. I don't know how to live anymore." Victor remained unmoved. "I gave you chances. And you buried them along with your conscience." Xavier pulled Sylvia toward the door. Before stepping through the iron gate, he turned back, furious. "I swear I won't let this go. I'll fight this." Victor smirked. "You lost the moment you slapped a child who couldn't fight back." The gate shut behind them. Paula stood still, hands trembling. "I don't know what to say." Victor looked at her. His eyes were no longer cold, just weary and full of repentance. "You don't have to say anything. Just take care of Lucas. And keep a part of this home, the way Mary once dreamed it." Paula nodded gently. "I won't disappoint you." Victor turned to Lucas. The boy hesitated, then asked. "Grandpa, can I call you Grandpa for real now?" Victor bent down and wrapped his arms around him. Yes. And I'll never leave you again. Lucas buried his face in Victor's chest. I always knew, someday, you'd love me. 1 week later. The Roberts mansion was quiet again. The construction crews had left. Mary's old paintings were cleaned and rehung. The library was left untouched. Lucas's new bedroom was now on the second floor, right next to Victor's. Paula was preparing dinner in the kitchen. The scent of chicken soup filled the house, the same recipe Mary once made. Lucas set the table. Victor sat in the study, warm yellow light bathing his aged face. Grandpa. Lucas called. It's dinner time. Victor closed his book and walked out. When he sat down at the table, Paula placed a bowl of soup in front of him. It's nothing fancy, but it's real, she smiled. Victor nodded, his eyes misty. Real, the one thing I searched for all my life and never found. And now it's in the hands of the person I once deemed worthless. Paula smiled gently. I never hated you. I was just scared of you. Victor replied, voice choked. Now I'm scared you won't forgive me. Lucas jumped in. My mom already forgave you. And I'm not mad at you at all. Victor reached out and gently touched the boy's hair. I know. I always hoped someday you'd love me. And today is that day. Outside, the autumn wind blew softly. No more rain. No more shouting. Only the peace this house had never known. Victor looked out the window at the statue of the mother and child restored to its place and whispered. Mary. I finally made it right. Wealth, power, and bloodline don't define the worth of a person. Compassion and quiet sacrifice do. Those who seem weak often carry the strongest hearts. When cruelty reigns, justice may arrive late, but if we have the courage to face our wrongs, redemption will bring light to the end of the road. Most importantly, don't wait until it's too late to recognize those who truly love you. Once broken, some things can never be mended.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.